Hello, hello. I'm Chanel, this is Spirit of Stardust, and today I am doing the Tarot of Exception. So this is a VR to Cozy Core craft. But pretty much we're talking about exceptions to sort of our rules or preferences for decks. Sometimes you like a deck that you shouldn't like. So let's have a look at my choices. I'm going to try to be quick because I'm racing the sun. So the first deck for me is the True Black Tarot. So the reason that this is my Tarot of Exceptions, I'm going to maybe zoom out a little bit, is because it is a pip deck. I do not like pip at all. I really don't. They do nothing for me. I like to see imagery and art, and I want to see the meaning sort of conveyed in the picture. And I know this is a pip deck and you're seeing all the non-pips, but it is pippish. So even though all of the pip decks are different, with some pip decks you will just literally see the same image just multiplied depending on how many numbers there are, it is still very pippish compared to the rest of the deck, which is very highly illustrated. But I love the pips in this deck. They are gorgeous, and somehow they do portray the energy of that card without having to use more illustrations. Like, it's enough to get, oh yeah, I understand what this is about. And I love them, and they're in the same also limited color scheme, but it vibes. It makes sense for this deck. So even though I absolutely love the illustrations, the ones that have people in them, the sort of angelic kind of beings, I still don't mind these. Like, really, I shouldn't like this. That is just 7 swords. One of them is burning, but I do. I do. So it doesn't bother me at all. That's quite a confronting pip, that one. But yeah, so this is a pip deck, and normally I absolutely hate and despise pip decks, but this one, I bloody like it. Like, this is literally just glasses, but I'm like, yeah, man, it slaps. So pip decks are normally ones I do not like, but in this case, I do. Okay, so the next thing that I normally do not like in decks, those are my cats, it's borders. I'm not a border girly. I like it to bleed to the edges. I want all image, no borders, thank you. And I normally am a trimmer. So if a deck has borders, I generally do trim them. But this border, I don't mind. It's also ornate, which is like even something I like less in borders, is when there's so much going on. But I think in this particular deck, it works. It adds that extra bit of sort of luxury, I guess, ornateness. It's the majesticness of it is amplified by the borders. I actually do like the illustrations within the borders, so they're not displeasing to my eyes. Like, yeah, I'm a sucker for sun, moon, and stars. So the fact that they're filled with the sun, moon, and stars is probably what's also in their favor. But I do think it works. I think if this deck didn't have the borders, it would not be as pretty, to be honest. I don't think these images would work as well if it was just this image bled to the edge. I think the border definitely helps encapsulate the picture and to frame it really well. With the gold foiling too on there, it sort of adds weight and adds a more like picture viewing element to this deck. So this is one of the cases that I actually like the borders. Kitties. Okay, so now we're going on to one of my biggest, well, what used to be one of my biggest annoyances, and that is decks that do not have guidebooks at all. I did not buy them in the past, so I'm still fairly new to tarot and oracle cards. I only started last year, was the first year that I dipped my toe into it, and then I dived right in. I just absolutely submerged myself in the world of tarot and oracle decks. So in the beginning, especially with tarot, I obviously didn't know it. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what any of the meanings were. So I relied heavily on guidebooks. And if a deck, doesn't matter how beautiful it was, if it did not have a guidebook, it wasn't even an option for me. And this was the very first tarot deck that I purchased that didn't have a guidebook, because I finally reached the point where I know what the meanings are for the cards, and I knew that I'd be fine. You know, once you know, you know. And so yeah, so I finally indulged in this deck. I'd seen it for so long, but because, like I said, I didn't have a guidebook, I was like, oh no, I can't, 'cause, you know, what am I going to do? And I think first I actually purchased a tarot book with tarot meanings, and I thought, oh, I'll just keep referencing that book. No. Once you have enough knowledge, it's like, yeah, I can just use my own intuition and my own knowledge. I did not want to be getting that book out and reading it. So it didn't, the way the book was written up did not match the energy of this deck. That was the biggest thing. I'm like, they're not connecting, they're not aligning. So yeah, so this was the very first deck that I purchased that doesn't have a guidebook, and now I do actually purchase decks that don't have guidebooks. Only tarot though, I don't. Oracle, I need a guidebook. It's like, unless it's very, very obvious, like the keyword and the image is so in your face, maybe. But I love guidebooks for Oracle decks, man. I love reading those messages. I love getting those words of wisdom and seeing what hits in that message. Because sometimes too, it might change my opinion on how I'm receiving that keyword originally. But with tarot decks, I now do purchase ones without guidebooks. But yeah, this was the very first time I ever did that, and the very first exception I made to that rule. Okay, so for my next exception is like massive things. Like this is the guidebook, guys. Like look how gigantic this is. This is enormous. And these cards are bigger than my hands. I don't like big cards because I struggle to shuffle them and it hurts. So it also means I have to crochet much larger bags. That means more yarn, more time. So I normally do not actually go for anything that is oversized. But I could not resist with this Begin Oracle. I just absolutely love the collage style. I love the words. The guidebook is phenomenal. It's all over the place, higgledy-piggledy. There's no concrete structure. The creator just wrote whatever they wanted for each of the card meanings. Some have more, some have less. But yeah, this is the biggest sized deck that I have in my collection. And yeah, I made an exception because this one is my little honeybee. And I was like, I will hurt my hands for you, but only you. So this is my like kind of one exception to the rule. I might make another exception in the future, but generally I would choose a pocket over an oversized deck any day of the week. I just don't want to be in pain. Okay, so next up we have, oh God, I even hate touching it. Crappy cardstock. So, and I just don't mean like crappy cardstock as in like the quality is crappy. I mean the feel of it. So this is a Messages from the Heart of the Divine. And this is a double whammy of things I hate in decks. So first off, it's the texture of the cardstock. It's got what I call a chalkboard texture, and it feels like I'm touching a chalkboard, and I can't stand it. And I normally give away every single deck that feels like that because I don't want to take it out. However, I love the imagery and the write-ups so much that I've made an exception for this. I still keep on saying that one day I'm just going to scan the images and reprint it myself on cardstock that I enjoy. If I can find a cheaper option to do that, because at the moment just printing your own decks for one-off is way too expensive. So I will eventually find a way around this, but at the moment, yeah, I hate touching it even just for this. The second thing that I normally can't stand is Roman numerals. Like, bro, check this level out. I know that I can sit there and I can figure it out, but I just don't want to use that extra brain power to convert Roman numerals to their numerical equivalent. I don't want to sit here and figure out that that's 27. I don't want to. So I normally, if I see that, I hate it. I'm like, no, why? Why make it so much harder? Like this isn't neater than writing 38. Like, just write 38, bruh. Like, why are you doing this? So Roman numerals and really horrible cardstock in terms of the tactile sensation are things I don't like in decks, but yet I have this deck which defies that. Okay, so the next thing is text heavy. I normally do not like decks that have, these are all upside down, have a lot of text on them. You know, if it's too much text, it's just like, oh no, it looks like a textbook. It's not pretty. But I love this little itty bitty deck. This is a Sovereign Oracle. This is an indie deck. It sits on my desk, and every single day I pull a card, I pull a word, and I normally pick one of the sentences that I feel I'm drawn to. And I love it. Like, it's very simple. It's just got some sort of background, mostly they're of gemstones, and then a lot of text, which I don't like. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't like this really visually, but I freaking love this deck. I think it's such a little powerhouse and probably a really underrated deck because it has just so many uses. You can use it for divination, you can use it for word of the day, you could pair it together, you can use it as a creative inspiration, activity, you know, write a story about these two words combined or whatever. It's just got a lot of uses, and I really appreciate it, despite the fact that aesthetically it's not my bag, baby. Okay, so this is the Magical Botanical Oracle, and this is a tarot exception because this is a deck that has very few cards. So normally I have an arbitrary rule that I don't buy decks that have less than 36 cards. This deck has less than 36 cards, but I found it so stunning, both in its aesthetic design and in its themes, because it's about herbs and plants, but with a magical witchy aspect. So that is right up my alley, you know, just completely right up there. Couldn't get further up my alley if you tried. That I decided to make an exception. It is also very pricey, so it was expensive for a mass market deck, and it only has, you know, 30 something cards, but I was like, oh, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it, even though I'm always going to be annoyed that there's not more. I really do feel like I'd say 44 should be the minimum. I use that number because for some reason a lot of people are just doing 44 decks these days, 44 cards, sorry. And I'm like, all right, well then 44 is the minimum, not this less than 36 nonsense, but this was an exception that I made, and no regrets. Okay, so here we have the Hollow Valley deck of symbols. This exception is a black and white deck. I love the colors black and white. They feature predominantly in my wardrobe. They're my favorite colors to wear. However, in decks, it does absolutely nothing for me. Like, it really does nothing. I need one other color in there. Black and white alone just leaves me feeling really cold and not interested. However, this deck reads like a beast. Like, when I got this, I don't even remember pre-ordering this. Was a pre-order. I had no idea. I think I must have gone on some sort of sleepwalking ordering thing, because I'm like, who ordered this? What Chanel and what universe was like, yeah, this deck is for me? Because once again, it's black and white. I'm not interested in the black and white, and I'm also not a huge fan of this actual type of artwork. It just doesn't appeal to me. And the fact that there's no like sort of keywords on here. It's a title of a card, but that, you know, some of these don't have an inherent meaning for me, you know. So this was really like, how? Why? How does this make sense? What is the equation that this adds up to? But yeah, it does. Like I said, this is one of those ones that it read phenomenally. And I have decks in my collection that don't have anything that I really go for in general, and yet they're phenomenal readers. And because of that, it doesn't matter what the cardstock is, what the artwork is, what the color story, what the theme, it does not matter. If it reads bone-chillingly well, I'ma keep it. And that was the case with this deck. This is the only black and white deck that I have in my collection, because I don't go for them. I really don't. And like I said, I have no memory of pre-ordering this deck, and I don't know why I did, but I'm glad I did. It turned out to be serendipitous. Now, speaking of colors, not liking black and white, something else I really dislike is primary colors. Blue, red, and yellow, especially combined. It's an eyesore for me. It is an eyesore. I react quite viscerally to it. I don't like it. It just reminds me kind of the 90s, early, you know, Word document projects where it was just a very limited ability of what you could do. Sorry, I had to pull my hair out of there. So this is the BuzzFeed Oracle, FYI. And it is based, its color story is primary colors. I don't like it. I really don't. And compared with the very, like I said, basic computer graphic type art, this does affront my eyes. My eyes are like, why are you subjecting us to this? This is not for us. You know, this is an eyesore. But I like this deck. It has a few keywords per item, but also you can just do this as your own, you know, intuitively, if you have a meaning inherent when you hear alligator, for instance. So I don't always, cat watching the cat, piano cat, I don't always look up the guidebook for this. If I get an intuitive hit of like, oh, I know what eggplant means in this situation, if you know what I mean. But yeah, the color story in this, can't stand it. Like, this is just gross to me. It's not calming. It's stimulating me in a non-pleasant way. So this is an exception to the rule. Once again, it's on a deck because I like it for other reasons, not because of this, in spite of this, you know, these colors. And speaking of colors, we've got the Return of Spirit, which is kind of like fractals, I guess is that what you'd call this? But this has a very retro vibe, and by retro I mean real dated. Like this kind of imagery, the text, the font there, the borders, all this screams nah brah to me. It is not in harmony with what pleases me in any way. I really don't like it. I really don't. The only reason I have this deck is because my ex-boyfriend's mum gave me some of her decks to play with that I never heard of before. And it just, once again, read amazingly. Like the messages really hit. And every person that I have done a reading with this deck, the message just punches them in the throat. They are like, holy shit, that's amazing. But looking at it, none of them were impressed when I whipped it out. They're like, what is this dated monstrosity? I'm sorry, but like, yeah, some people might love this, but for me, I really do not like it at all. I don't resonate with the pictures. Maybe some people could get hits from this kind of thing. It just reminds me of magic eyes when I was a child, and I really did not like doing those. They gave me headaches. And like I said, the font just really annoys me for some reason. It reminds me of like when I used to write Buffy fan fiction back in the day in Word, and I would choose like a special font that I thought this is the most similar to Buffy that I can get on Word, and, you know, pair it with a border, put those word borders around it. This is what it reminds me of. So there's some nostalgia there, but like, no. So yeah, I'm not into whatever you call this. This is not something that I would purposefully ever choose. This just happened to be in my collection because I played with this deck from somebody else and it blew me away. Okay, so the next one is sort of, it's so bowed. It's sort of like affirmation decks. Just decks that they have no guidebook. All they've got is a phrase. So you just get your little phrase, you are capable of brilliant transformation, ! I normally can't stand them. Like if they would have to have a really good guidebook to expand upon the affirmation, but this deck just has this. This is all it's got. But I really like it. Even though the artwork is so varied, it's very mixed. It is not consistent. In general, I like it. It's on a rose petal cardstock, which I do like, but it has bowed, as you can see. But for some reason, I just can't get rid of this little dude. Somehow, in every reading, the one affirmation will somehow hit. I'm like, okay, you really like put the punchline in this reading perfectly, so you may stay. It also goes a lot with a lot of my decks somehow. So yeah, this is an exception to the rule because, like I said, there is normally no way that I would ever buy a deck that just has a phrase on it and nothing else. That's just, I have no interest in that whatsoever. But in this one I did, and it has stayed. It works. So as long as it works for me, you know, it's earned its place. But this is the only deck I have that just has words and no other guidebook to it. Okay, and last but not least, you're probably thinking like, how does this bag go with this deck? The bag represents the energy of the deck. It's called the Energetics of Color. So this is the Energetics of Color deck. And this deck for me is about the photography. So the photography used in this deck, this very modern photography, but not like, I'm not saying it's not artistic, but it's just very basic modern photography for me. I don't like it. Like, I don't like this kind of photography. And then especially like mixed in with this collage, it's not a style that I go gaga over whatsoever. But I freaking love this deck, man. So this is based on color. Out of all the color decks that I have worked with, this has been my absolute favorite. There are pictures I like more, so I like the ones that don't have people in them. I'm not really a fan of the people ones in here. It does sort of take me out of it, but with this deck, I can ignore it and just look at the color. Like I can actually see past the image of this person and see the electric orange in there. And so therefore I'm able to use it. Like same with this, I cannot see their face and just see the green, you know? So I love it because of that. I love it because, there's a happy lady. The guidebook is fantastic. I love the way it's structured. I love the colors in this. Like this, what is this picture? And I like that this not only includes the name of the color, but also a keyword to go with it. But yeah, visually, I don't like this kind of modern photography. It turns me off a deck. If I see it in there, I'm like, yeah, I don't want it. No, thank you. Even though, like I said, even though it is collaged in, it's still, it really is not for me. But I love this deck despite the photos and imagery like used in it. You know, I can, like I said, somehow I can see past the images to the color. And like, I love the guidebook so much that it's fine, you know, like I'll deal, I can deal. But yeah, these were just some of the tarot exceptions, things I generally don't like, but yet these decks I make an exception for. So I hope that wherever you are having an exceptional morning, afternoon, or evening. And as always, stay wild, Star Child.